And we're somehow live.
Hello.
Hello.
Nobody's ever going to watch this. Look at it.
This is really, really shitty.
We have bad internet. We have bad internet, guys. So we're going to see how this goes.
Yeah, you're not even going to want to watch. You may listen.
This will be, this is going to be really
And
interesting.
I specifically said that we needed to improve the internet, but Jen's a little 3 sheets to the wind at this point. So we're not working with a full deck here. And we're trying
Don't put it on me. I told you the hotel Wi-Fi wasn't great, but you didn't like my hotspot.
The hotel should have good Wi-Fi.
But should, you know what? I'm not going to get into that with you.
Well, I can only stay so long because I have to drive back to my hotel.
You have nowhere else to go right now.
Not at the moment. I don't.
You really have nowhere else to go.
So it's been an interesting couple of days.
We've had an interesting couple of days, people. Bear with us. Our internet is not good.
Yeah, like I said, the internet is.
Hi, guys.
Giving us a hard time for the time being.
We are in
I could
DC.
probably go live on my cell phone. I wonder what difference that. You should scoot over a little bit because you're like taking up like a lot.
Fine, let them sit there.
No.
Well, now let me show you what happens if I sit centered in my chair. That's comfortable.
That's your choice.
Well, that's comfortable to me.
Jen, why are we in Washington?
We're in Washington because today there was an event that I wanted to attend for World Press Freedom Day, which was, really generally press freedom, pro whistleblowers, pro First Amendment, but really specifically a Julian Assange event. Well, it's hard, guys. You have to bear with us. It's not typical.
I will go live on my cell phone.
See what happens if that's better. But we started out at the Department of Justice. We walked to the press club, and then we walked again to the Washington Post. There were speakers at each of those locations. Jose was what's Jose's last name?
Jose Vega.
Jose Vega.
We definitely have to do something about this because we're not getting anything. But the signal on my phone is pretty strong.
All right, then see what happens. Then go without Wi-Fi. Then if you want to do it without Wi-Fi, do it without Wi-Fi. But I honestly, I'm telling you that I told you that the Wi-Fi sucked here.
Well, then I guess we shouldn't have gone live. We either do a show where people can
do it on your phone. Then do it on your phone. I didn't realize it would be this bad on my Verizon, on my hotspot, because that's what I was using before, and it was fine.
All right, so I have to go to StreamYard.com.
I really think it's better on the hotspot.
Well, we're going to find out.
I'm going to change it. I'm going to see what happens.
All right, so what are you going to switch it to?
I'm going to switch it to my hotspot and see what happens. It's just the same, so I don't know if it'll be any different.
Well, we're gonna hope and pray that is actually gonna make a difference. But for those of you that are here, please smash the like button.
Guys, we're sorry. We're sorry that we're having we're in DC we were here for a Julian Assange event that happened today. We just had a really nice meeting with Max Alvarez of The Real News, and it was really cool. He's awesome, and it was really cool to meet him in person and just hang out. Everything was off the record, so nothing good to talk about there. Lots of good stuff to talk about.
Can we finish our order, please? We're also late night munching.
And Peter's getting
past
hangry.
The point that I would want to be eating anyway.
He's hangry, so let me order him food. Go ahead and.
We are absolutely not visiting DWS. That is not why we are here. Although we can assure you that no one really does care for her at all, anywhere, anytime. So there is that. We have that working.
She's horrid.
Yeah, pretty horrid. I would say that's the fairest way of putting it. So it's been an interesting couple of days. We have done a little bit of sightseeing. The first thing we did when we met up here was go to the Library of Congress. It's actually the first time I've ever been. It's quite extraordinary, I must say. Really a nice place to visit. You don't really have to wait very long to get in.
No, it's nice.
There's some nice things to see. We managed to. The odyssey of trying to get to the Jefferson Memorial today was quite
complicated. That was ridiculous.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous.
It's like they really don't know which way they're coming and going in terms of how to find the actual location, which is quite bizarre. But it is one of the more interesting places to visit in the city. And I will say that, and as Jen has pointed out, one of the sayings that is inscribed on the wall.
Oh, I do love this.
At the Jefferson Memorial is, and I quote, "I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions. But laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change. With the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy as civilized society to remain ever under the regimen of their barbarous, is that how you say it? Barbarous ancestors. So I had it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Barbarous ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what he is saying is that
he knew better.
The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are living, breathing documents. And that over time, as society evolves, it will need to be amended, not thrown out, not disintegrated.
It's a living thing.
But that's why you have amendments, and that's
Right.
why you have new adjustments that are made. So when somebody says that I'm a constitutional absolutist,
that's not a thing.
Or an original, well, an originalist. It's like, okay, so you want to live in a time of dysentery and yellow fever. If you're okay with that, I thought we eradicated it, but evidently, you want to.
I really like the Jefferson. I think that it gets underplayed. I think the Jefferson gets not as good play as the Lincoln.
Yeah. I think that it is underrated. I think most people, and listen,
I like the Jefferson.
The Lincoln Memorial is wonderful.
Well, it's a total pain in the ass to get to. Let's argue that.
Well, in terms of parking, it is much more difficult than the Jefferson Memorial. Jefferson Memorial actually has a decent parking.
It has a decent parking situation,
which is not much you
can
can say about DC.
No.
Yes. Well, finding it, of course, is definitely the hard part. And so today,
I think the Lincoln gets a lot more play.
Yes, the Lincoln Memorial definitely,
especially based on location. But I mean, it does. It just gets more play. More people talk about the Lincoln Memorial. There's more. I don't know. I think the Jefferson is underplayed, and I'd also like to give a shout out to the George Mason Memorial.
Yes, the George Mason Memorial is wonderful.
The George Mason Memorial, which probably nobody even really stops to look at, but apparently, and I didn't really know this, the George Mason is one of the forefathers of our Bill of Rights in that he wrote the Bill of Rights to the Constitution for the state of Virginia, which actually predated the actual Bill of Rights that we all know about. And James Madison apparently based his Bill of Rights, our Bill of Rights, on the one that was written by George Mason for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so it's just very interesting anyway. But there's this really nice memorial. And we took a picture there the last time we went there. You took a picture of me sitting there next to that George Mason. Because I found it interesting, like both times. I felt like, yeah, that's really interesting. And then when you're walking to the Jefferson Memorial from where the parking is, there's an opportunity to see this George Mason Memorial, and it's really kind of cool.
Washington is definitely not a city that you want to drive a car in if you have to park. It is not easy. And of course, the parking.
You should have known that, and I've told you that, but you don't listen.
Well, I'm usually pretty good at finding spots, but when you're trying to park anywhere near the federal buildings, forget it. It's not going to happen.
It's just not feasible.
You got to either have like a special parking pass, or if you're lucky enough to work on Capitol Hill, you happen to have like these underground parking garages that no one really knows about.
Did we do a normal intro? Hi, it's Jen. I'm Peter.
Yes,
did we?
I think so.
I don't think we did.
Oh, well. Hi, I'm Peter, and that's Jen, and you are watching Generational Change on YouTube.
On Wednesday.
Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, get it out there to everybody. We're probably going to have a very light crowd tonight simply because we didn't promote this. We're on a half hour later than normal.
We're all over the place, and I'm a little toasty.
Yeah, Jen's definitely been throwing feedback.
Because I didn't eat. I ate so long ago, and then I just had 2 beverages, which for me is a lot of beverages. They were somewhat potent, and I went vodka, not rum. I went vodka.
No, I was stuck with a Pilsner beer that was like a Stella, and it was a nice dive spot called Lost and Found. You always want to shout out the small business establishments wherever you go if you can.
It's a great little place, guys. This area that I'm staying in, I don't know what area you would call this. What area?
I don't know the neighborhood. I could look
I'm
on
somewhere between Logan Circle and Penn Square, whatever they call that, Penn Quarter. Between that and Logan Square, basically. And it's a nice area.
We're in Penn Quarter. That's where we are.
Penn Quarter.
Yeah.
I'm like kind of north of that. I don't know, but it's a nice area, and I really like this place. Also, shout out to the Eldon Luxury Suites because while they're not very luxurious, they're very spacious. And it's very, very nice. And I do like that. I feel like it's almost like I'm getting an Airbnb.
Well, this is definitely a converted apartment
of
some kind.
But the price of this was like, seriously, it was like the second least expensive hotel accommodation in the vicinity.
Well,
and it had so much more space. I don't like being in just a room.
Well, I'm staying in Arlington, and it's a place that's pretty convenient, I would say, in terms of distance. And of course, price is a concern to me as always. So
the truth is, like, honestly, if the only problem with you ever staying here is the fact that we only have one bathroom. I can't stay with one bathroom. Not well. It's not good.
No,
because this is a sleeper sofa there, but yeah, we still have only one bathroom.
So we came into town. It's been fun. We've run into some.
I met Ryan Grimm in person. That was fun.
Ryan Grimm is good people.
I got to meet Ryan Grimm this morning in person. It was so nice to meet him in person. Got to meet Jose in person.
Yeah.
Medea, we've met in person, but it's still always good to see Medea.
Well, Medea has a place in Miami, so.
And if people are not aware, Medea's the shit, man.
She is.
Love her.
So we put a short out, spliced together a whole bunch of clips. We were able to capture some really good sound bites from Medea, from Jose. Jen even had an opportunity to speak, took some good shots. And look,
thankfully captured by our friend Ryan Grimm, who was nice enough to shoot, because I would never say anything to anybody about take my picture. I hate that shit.
Well,
never get pictures.
But bottom line, our constitutional rights are going away every day, and people want to pretend like it's not happening. It's even big. The posts that we put out there, it is amazing. It is still amazing, even to this day, how people say Julian Assange isn't a journalist. Like, you really don't understand what journalism is. You don't need like a journalist badge to be a journalist. Every citizen is. Do you know what citizen journalism means? You have to be a certified journalist. Do you know what citizen journalism is? I mean, honestly, I choose my words carefully because I really don't want to offend people. But you don't know what you're talking about when you say that Julian Assange is not. Well, but
here's the more important issue. Okay, that's looking at it from the legal perspective in terms of if he qualifies as a journalist in terms of what this means criminal liability wise, right? But when it comes to the First Amendment, something I think is very important and people really forget, and forgive me guys, because I am slightly intoxicated. But the thing about the First Amendment isn't so much the right of the press to put out information, okay? That's not really the part of it that matters more. It's our right to hear that information. It's the right to put out the information for the benefit of the public, okay? So it really is irrelevant if you categorize somebody as a journalist or not. That's really not the point. When we're talking about the free press, it's about public information that is of value to the public being put out to the public that is basically anti the establishment. Okay. Now, generally speaking, historically, that's been journalists, the Fourth Estate, muckrakers. Those have been the people that have done that job. It has generally fallen to journalists to do that job. Embarrassingly now, we don't really have that as much anymore. Now, again, I do actually think that it doesn't matter whether you call Julian a journalist or not. He's acting in the capacity of the press by publishing relevant information that's factual. So it doesn't matter whether or not he qualifies as a journalist. That's completely irrelevant. And that's what's annoying. And I do think that if Julian says he's a journalist, then he's a journalist, because he can be whatever he wants to be. He's putting out factual information. Our right, our free press, First Amendment, is our reception of the information. People, don't forget that. All right. I don't give a shit about the rights of the Washington Post or the New York Times. I don't give a shit about the rights of WikiLeaks. I care about our right to have that information. And this is how we get that information. And I think that's that's sort of like the constitutional imperative of the First Amendment, is to create an educated electorate. It isn't to protect the rights of journalists to say whatever they want.
And why is Assange being
And yes,
prosecuted?
I do protect the rights of journalists to say what they want as humans under the First Amendment, but our press right is about us getting the information. Why is Julian Assange being prosecuted? Because he pissed off Hillary Clinton.
But what is the reason being given that he's being prosecuted? They want to prosecute him.
Well, they've tried a few things. They're actually at the point now where in order to properly extradite him and charge him under the Espionage Act, they're having to essentially prove that he contributed to and was a co-conspirator in the hacking into the system and to get the information that was actually provided by Chelsea Manning, which Chelsea Manning, even though who is one of the bravest people on earth, even though being held in, I can't even imagine the kind of conditions that she was held in, still refused to give them what they wanted, which was her to say that, oh, Julian Assange helped me. He's told me to do. They need to prove a causal link between Julian Assange and illegally obtaining information, and they don't have it. They don't have it. So ultimately what they're doing is they're prosecuting Julian Assange for printing the truth. Hence the violation of the First Amendment. So they might want to create a scenario where they can say Julian Assange hacked this, did that, but those are all untrue. And they have no evidence of that. None whatsoever. Because if they had any evidence whatsoever of Julian Assange actually hacking or doing anything like that, then Obama would have prosecuted him in the first place. But he knew that they didn't. And he knew that the only way to be able to get him would be under this very weak link to the Espionage Act. And it's the total death of the First Amendment. I cannot stress this enough. I've been saying it for I feel like it's been 15 years. I know it hasn't quite been 15 years, but it's like, hear me now, quote me later. Julian Assange being extradited and prosecuted by on the behalf of the Espionage Act, or, in accordance to the Espionage Act, is the death of the First Amendment in this country. It's the end. It's done. You can no longer print the truth. People are now at risk for printing the truth. We have been completely, I do not think people understand the gravity of the situation.
And the argument that's being used is that, well, we're not actually, you don't hear people like piping at the top of their lungs, prosecute Assange. No, you are a co-conspirator in not saying anything about this.
Any media person
I don't want to hear another word from you, Jimmy, or anybody else out there about Ryan Grimm ever again. You may not like some of his takes. You may not like the fact that he gives favorable coverage to the squad. He was there today.
Oh, yeah.
And he was there with your boy. And you know who I'm talking about. And eventually it'll get back to you. And the fact that he was there covering this tells you all you need to know. You know who else was covering this today and wrote a piece on it? John Nichols of The Nation. He covered this. And I guarantee you our friend Max Alvarez at the Real News.
But he wasn't out there. He's in
Wisconsin. But he wrote about what was happening today with Assange and us being there. So there are good people that are out there, but there's so few that will actually stand up and say the truth. And there are reasons why. Probably the biggest reason why is because, unfortunately, in this town, people want to be in the club. They want to be in the press club.
Here's really what it comes down to. If you see somebody that is a quote unquote journalist, works for a news organization, anything like that, and they are not adamantly screaming on behalf of Julian Assange, then they're not really journalists. They're just not.
No.
They're just talking heads. I assure you that they are talking heads, because your Greg Palast of the world, your like actual journalists of the world have been screaming about this for years. Abby Martin for years. So everybody you're watching, if they're not talking about this, they're not a real journalist.
Even people that we know that we're friendly with that would be considered journalists by a normal standard are not going to touch this. And the reason they won't touch it is because they do care about whether or not they're invited into certain circles. I think you know one of the people I'm talking about.
I'm not even sure who you're talking about, because anybody journalist person that we know covers this pretty much.
Maybe so, but there are also those who cover it in a very
like Jordan doesn't focus on it, but he covers it.
No, absolutely. I wasn't talking about it.
It's not his area of focus.
An older liberal.
Okay. All
right. So unfortunately, for those reasons, it becomes this whole, well, this really is a slight on the Democratic Party, and we just can't have that. Look, the Republicans lost their shit when Assange revealed what he revealed back in 2010 about the torture program with President Bush. This is not, unfortunately for so many people, this is the effect of the two-party duopoly in its worst form, which is if it's bad for our side, we're simply going to smear it, whitewash it, do whatever we have to do to justify that this caused Hillary Clinton to lose. You mean proving that the 2016 primary was rigged?
I reject that and resent that entire argument. What caused Hillary Clinton to lose is that she sucks.
Yeah, sucks.
What caused Hillary Clinton to lose was Hillary Clinton sucking. That's what caused her to lose. And any other thing is irrelevant.
And the same is true for Joe Biden. He would have lost if it wasn't for the pandemic.
And he'll lose now.
He can't even pretend. And anyone who pretends like it's not, listen, before the pandemic hit, remember, it was already looking like remember, the screw job was already excuse me. I mean, the COVID was here already, but it didn't really take off until it became pretty obvious that this was not going Bernie's way and that they had the fix, if you will, was in for Joe Biden. And the numbers were already coming out at that time that it was like 80 to 85% that Trump was going to be reelected. By the time that COVID had taken over and he had completely botched it and everything that was going on, the scales had clearly tipped in Joe Biden's favor. It took a once in a lifetime circumstance for something like that to once in a century type of circumstance.
And it won't happen again.
It won't happen again. And the worst part is the fact that he did beat Trump, and now they think that he's going to beat him again.
No, but he was actually correct in the very beginning when he said, when he was running, I'm going to be a one-term president. Yes, you will, Joe.
Yeah, he really will be. And now it's just going to be worse and worse. And let me tell you, one of the things that's interesting, because we all know what's happening with the first person who has challenged Joe Biden, but the second person who has decided to get into this race, RFK Jr., let me tell you, I have probably pretty strong disagreements with him, especially about healthcare. But with that said, he has some pretty based takes about a number of issues, including Julian Assange. So, how you can do it however you want me to do it, because you don't like this thing. No, I don't want to mess up we are working on Jen's computer right now.
It's my laptop.
So it'll be sad if Trump was to do this nonsense again. Let me tell you something, meme master. We will have in some technical sense, we will have brought it on ourselves. There's no question about it. But the fact is, the system's broken.
So let's talk about this. Go to where you can read it if you want to read it.
Okay.
Go to. Yeah.
So here is a statement that was just made yesterday by RFK Jr. Instead of championing free speech, the U.S. actively persecutes journalists and whistleblowers. First of all, the fact that he even said that line alone, you don't even need to address Julian Assange. The fact that you said that,
yes,
it's pretty freaking big.
Well, it's more than anybody else has done.
Correct. I'll pardon brave truth tellers like Julian Assange and investigate the corruption and crimes they expose. Listen, I don't give a damn that RFK, I am sure, did not write this, but the fact that he greenlit this and is cool with it.
And is having it attached to his name, that counts. Look, it matters what you'll put your name to. Everybody uses speechwriters.
And echoing his own father, this isn't the Soviet Union. Correct, it's not. The America I love doesn't imprison dissidents.
And then he continued.
Other brave truth tellers include John Kiriakou, Chelsea Manning, reality winner, Daniel Hale, Thomas Drake, Jeff Sterling, and Edward effin Snowden.
Well, he didn't say effin.
Well,
he's outliving that. They were trying to return America to its democratic and humanitarian ideals. So let me be very clear that in my mind, if I were facing my Democratic primary right now, if that were sitting in front of me right now, I'm voting for him. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying if it were right now and my three choices were my three choices in a Democratic primary, that alone gets me to vote for him. And I have said it very many times as far as even the idea of voting for Joe Biden again. There is a list of things he would have to do. This would be one of the things on that list that he would have to do. The fact that RFK Jr. has specifically said and by name called out these individuals that he supports them is one of the biggest things that I don't think I've seen anybody on any national stage in any capacity at talking like that. Bernie a little bit. Bernie a little bit talks about that stuff, but not like that.
Definitely agree. Joe, I do not believe, I can't really say for certain because I don't want to misquote. I do not believe that Marianne has addressed this topic. But what I will say is that regardless if she has or not, she has in no way, shape, or form addressed it the way that RFK did.
Like, he was unequivocal.
He's putting himself in harm's way by making that statement.
The fact that he named names.
Yeah. And it's just the beginning because he just got in the race.
And we talked about this earlier, and I do think that to some extent that he does have the privilege, additional privilege, to being a Kennedy in terms of willing to put his name out there and be able to take some shit and take some heat. He has a certain sort of baseline support network just by who he is that he could probably endure more scrutiny than another person.
And
might.
let's be honest, here's a guy that knows that his father and his uncle were murdered by our shadow government. And with that in mind, it's like he knows 10 times more than what we know. Like, he knows the depths of how far this goes. And the fact that he, in some ways, seems like he may be lining himself up to potentially martyr himself, like his father, is pretty freaking insane to think that he's willing to do that.
And I looked into him a little bit. I mean, look, there's definitely some background stuff that's less than ideal. The thing with his last wife, like the suicide. Look, there's some shit.
Now, Brian brings up a good point. No one here is a fan of nepotism by any stretch. So why don't you take the opportunity now to share some of his credentials and why he could be in this position?
Well, guys, I mean, look, there's no doubt about it that when you're a Kennedy, that opens all the doors that lead you to these opportunities.
Correct.
That's true. Okay, so his level of education, his opportunities in terms of who he met and who he's been able to work with, that's a red carpet for a Kennedy, no doubt. But that doesn't necessarily mean they all have to choose this path. I would urge you guys to look up some of the environmental work he's done and some of the people he has gone after. Because this is where, yes, I do think having the name Kennedy gives somebody a certain extra set of cojones to do certain things. But he's sued our military. He sued, was it the U.S. Navy? He sued the U.S. Navy. He sued Exxon. He's been part of
Exxon Mobil. I mean, that's pretty freaking.
He's basically like it. Well, it's like Stephen Donziger. RFK Jr. is an environmental attorney that has been representing the most indigenous, downtrodden, like people that are the biggest victims of environmental injustice. And he's been in that. So again, and I'm not saying that any one thing is be all end all. I know he's had some not good takes. I'm not endorsing him. I'm just saying I would encourage people to look at his work experience, because when you are in his position, you don't really have to do anything. You really don't. You don't have to do anything. He could have just be at his cushy. He could be at a cushy practice, and he is.
He could be like Chelsea Clinton.
He's at a nice law firm, but the cases that he has taken on are very David and Goliath cases. And even though, yes, he has an advantage because of his name and because of his background, the fact that he's willing to lend that privilege to this when he doesn't have to.
And he is putting himself in harm's way.
That to me speaks volume. I am a very big proponent of this concept of lending privilege. I think it's one of my biggest motivators. And I feel like my privilege, just being who I am and the life I was born into, it is so imperative that we lend that. But this is someone I think that really did do that. And he does that. So I would just encourage you guys to check out his resume. And look at he's absolutely somebody who's qualified. And yeah, there's some negative shit there. There's no doubt there is some negative shit. If you guys want to go dig up some negative shit on him, there is some. But it looks like to me that he has spent the vast portion of at least the past 15, 20 years focusing on environmental justice.
Rufio, it's a hell of a lot more than that. Just put it that way. All I can say is, and this is all we're going to say on the matter. She'll be thanking her lucky stars that RFK is in the race, because it's going to go out with a whimper. and it won't even be noticed because there is somebody who's in the race now who I do think is legitimate, and he's going to potentially be a force.
Yeah.
I said from the very beginning, I said, look, they're going to try to hammer him with the vax stuff. He is not anti-vax. What he is he's anti-mandate and anti-vaccine when it comes to just completely trusting the government regarding the COVID vaccine. Now, what you guys have to remember, I took the vaccine. I'm not here to tell people what they should and shouldn't do. There were 3 different versions of it that clearly, whether it was, I took the Pfizer one. There were issues with Moderna, and I think it kind of went out with a whimper with the Johnson & Johnson one, from what I recall. Do you know how long it takes to perfect a vaccine, to actually deal with the trials that have to go on? The average amount of time, the average length of time to get a vaccine correct, 5 years. That's how long it takes. And yet we were to believe that this was going to completely eradicate. That's what they were telling us. They say, we have the vaccine. This is going to end COVID. You all have to take this thing. Say the dangers of what actually comes from being infected with the virus. Like it's a cocktail that will prevent you from getting sick. Now, does everybody need to take that? The answer is clearly no. The people who needed to take the vaccine were the people who were, let's say, having pre-existing conditions, have serious health problems that they need to deal with and could potentially be susceptible if they have a weakened immune system. There are a lot of things to consider if you are dealing with this problem. And so I don't know, again, I didn't listen to all of the things that RFK said regarding the vaccine. So I'm not about to, psychoanalyze what his intentions were. If he was telling people, don't take this, it's poison, it's blah, 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 blah. Again, the reality is the mandates were completely pointless. Forcing people at their jobs and costing them their jobs if they didn't take it. Again, I got vaccinated. I don't begrudge people who took it or didn't take it. All I know is that, excuse me?
You know why I got vaccinated?
Yeah, sure. Ultimately, it was a decision that should have been left up to the individual, and that was not how it was done. So believe it or not, there are a hell of a lot of people out there that may not say it publicly, but they're on the Democratic side and they agree with RFK. They definitely agree with RFK.
About the vaccine.
Correct. You're really underestimating how many people are pissed off about it.
Well,
and I was pointing out how
I just don't think it's relevant enough to stop people from voting.
The average trial that it takes to get a vaccine perfected at a minimum is 5 years.
Yeah, I'm not going to. Here's the problem with it is agree with him or not agree with him. It's not a hill to die on either direction. It just isn't, because it's not like the president of the United States that the most important thing about him is what his position was on vaccines. It really isn't.
Correct.
It's not. It's something that is, it's a side note. It's not that important.
No, but I also think that a lot of people, if Bobby gets $10, $20 million behind him, he's going to be dangerous. And if he wins New Hampshire, he's going to be really dangerous.
And after what they just did to New Hampshire, it's a variety of things.
Bobby is dangerous because he's capable of polling over 15%. He's capable of polling over 25%. And if the Democrats do not allow there to be a legitimate primary process, including a minimum of 3 to 5 debates, let me assure you, you are handing the election to the GOP.
Now, I am of the belief that it's irrelevant.
I don't agree with that.
I know.
The reason I don't agree with
I know
that,
you don't.
No, I think the only reason I think that the debates are necessary is because for a lot of people, they don't know who these guys are. So there are people who may know who Bobby Kennedy Jr. is. They may know who Marion is or whoever is running, but getting in front of the national audience.
What I'm saying is all roads lead to whoever is the Republican person winning.
Very likely, yes.
That's what I'm saying. So whether or not the Democrats host a primary or take the debates or do any of that stuff, that's sort of, to me, it's like, you could have your little fun, have your little party, have your little primary. It really doesn't matter. The truth is that none of these people are going to be able to beat whoever the Republican person is.
Uh,
I just don't think it's possible.
I would argue that if RFK were the nominee, he would have a puncher's chance, because I could see the argument. Yeah, Josh, you're right. He needs to get on all of the state ballots, which is key. And Richard, we would agree. What I would also say, which is important, and I think a lot of people need to understand this.
Biden is a big part of why capitalism is failing. Let's not
I
forget
agree.
he's been a big participant in the problem, specifically in this country, for the better part of the last 40,
Well, I've
50
actually
years.
said repeatedly, everyone thinks that Trump was the wake-up call. No, it's Biden that's the wake-up call, because people are being reminded of how Trump got in there in the first place.
Well, and the fact that Trump getting rid of him and things still being really horrible, that's not the problem.
No, it's the system that's the problem. Trump is a symptom of the system, and he let the cat out of the bag, and they are absolutely living.
I would argue that Joe Biden is much more of an architect of the problem than Trump could ever be.
Well, look, Biden is the architect of not only the crime bill, but NAFTA as well. Like, you want to talk about a system president, a person who has Joe Biden's been at it for 50 plus years on Capitol Hill. That's pretty scary.
It's ridiculous.
So we don't need that. Again, you're not going to have the big bad COVID boogeyman to scare the shit out of people into thinking that it's okay to get him back in the White House again.
It won't work.
And the fact that they're trying to close off every wall of this man being challenged, do you know how bad that's going to look once things really pick up in the fall? This is the calm before the storm. You all think that, it's not like anybody's paying attention. The second we get through the end of the summer, this thing is going to blow up like you have no idea.
Well, it'll blow up specifically when everybody sees that the Republicans are going through their process and having all their stuff in their primaries and their debates and all that stuff. And that will be a lot more glaring that, oh, wait, the Democrats don't likewise believe in democracy.
No. That prospect. They are completely content with the prospect of him getting in there again and just tearing shit up. Much worse than before. You think it was bad then? That's nothing compared to what you're going to see if he gets in there again.
Well, especially since
he'll have an axe to grind
and no cause to give a shit. You're not talking about having to be reelected at that point.
You know, Josh, you bring up a really great question. And the fact is, we were completely of the mind that DeSantis was going to be the next president.
Yeah.
We could have never foreseen that he would pass that abortion ban.
On
top of everything that's been
bad.
Going on. The fact that it's been so obvious for so long that this was the hill that they would die on if they were stupid enough to do it. And he was stupid enough to do it.
Yeah, I think that what he could have done was maybe realize that this was maybe more of a fight that he wanted to get into with Trump, and said, you know what, I'm just going to sit here for a bit, cool my heels. It won't matter if I sign this or not, because come 28, if I decide to run, that'll be old news by then. And so maybe because honestly, I don't see how anybody who is seriously about running for a national race would support something so unpopular.
Yeah, and for a lot of the people out there that had fear, whether rational or irrational, regarding DeSantis, when it comes to how things are run at the federal level versus the state level.
Yeah.
The thing about DeSantis that you guys have to remember is that it's actually a blessing in disguise that he is as authoritarian as he is, because he's a national figure. There are a lot of governors in states that you do not pay attention to, that I guarantee you do the same shit. They do the exact same shit.
Yeah.
They are the judge, jury, and executioner. And there is no position, without question, it's probably on the border of about 90%. Of the commanders-in-chief in the history of this country, it's over 80%. They're governors. That's who makes it to the White House. Governors make it to the White House. Joe Biden is a rare example of somebody who was a senator who made it to the White House and a vice president.
But that's why. I think that's also the key thing.
I would agree. He never had any momentum prior to.
No.
Trump obviously is an enigma. He is one of only 3 presidents that have never held elected office. Eisenhower and Washington are the other 2.
Both of course, who were military.
Both of whom we would not ever compare Donald Trump to.
No.
So here we are staring down the barrel of a Trump and Biden
round two.
And it's definitely not what the people want.
And it's not going to go the same way.
Now, could you imagine if Kennedy starts really stirring stuff up? I mean, he could. He's got that ability.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, he definitely has the guts. I mean, he's definitely challenged. And he's somebody that isn't scared of, and that's a Kennedy privilege,
right?
That he doesn't have to be concerned about the establishment because the Kennedys are the establishment. Like he's not worried about pissing off the top of the party. He don't care.
No,
he don't care. It doesn't matter to him at all. He doesn't have to play in their sandbox because why? Because he's a Kennedy. It just is. It's one of those things. It is. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's how it works.
Yeah, it's true. It's going to be
it's going to be hard it's hard to hurt that credibility. It is. Then it matters to people. And especially given that boomers are still voting in around. And especially when you're talking about who's voting in the Democratic Party, the people who are voting in the party, the young people, most of them are not registering as Democrats. The people that are voting in the Democratic Party are going to be a lot of older people, a lot of boomers. And I got to tell you, the Kennedy thing matters.
Eduardo, great to meet you today. Nagarani, as he is known online. Really nice to meet you. Thank you for showing up at the event today.
Yeah,
obviously,
for sure.
It would be nice if there were a lot more people that were there. But hey, you take what you can get. Ultimately, I do think that people are really underestimating in this very moment how pissed off people are. I also think people are underestimating the prospect of there potentially being some type of an independent/third-party candidate who's going to run. I could easily see Dave Smith running on the Libertarian ticket, and he'll gain some momentum. If there is a circumstance where Jesse Ventura could get on the ballot, even if it's on the forward party, hell, maybe he does go for it, and he would be a force to be reckoned with.
I'd be happy if Jesse Ventura would run as a Libertarian.
If they'd open the door and just let him go,
I know
he'd be dangerous.
The thing is that he's not with them on a lot of things.
No, he's not, because he believes in universal health care.
I know.
And you libertarians better get your
ass on board.
And
he believes in things like public education.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? So that's the problem.
Literally pull yourself
he's
up
with
by
them
your
on
dad's
the
bootstraps.
war and a lot of that stuff.
Civil liberties.
Great.
Yeah. No, listen, you take a little bit. Everyone wants to be in one box.
I don't have an ism. You know what? I refuse to subscribe to an ism.
From everything that you can take from somebody that says, I like this, I like that, this works for me. And that's it.
Yeah. I don't like isms.
Who does?
I always say the only ism for me is Jenism. I follow Jenism.
Just Jen.
Just Jen. Well, I don't like the idea of, once you say you subscribe, then that means you're going to bend over backwards and contort everything to fit into that box. Or you're living sort of like what we call, my friend in law school would call a cafeteria Catholic. You just sort of pick and choose what works for you.
Yum.
Yeah. So but that's why I would just as soon say, I don't have an ism. If you don't have I don't have an ism. I don't have a thing, because why? Why would I want to label myself as a thing? I really would rather not have a party. I don't particularly have any, I refuse to follow any sort of religion. I don't want an ism. I just don't. I don't need a doctrine of which to live by. And I think that's the problem.
And that's also the problem with a lot of the older voters, is that they've just been, that it's ingrained in their brain to pick a team red.
Yeah, well,
team
a lot
blue.
of people like teams. They like teams. They like labeling. It's easier for people to categorize you if you fit into a category, which is why people have so much trouble with,
and I hate to say,
transgender people and non-binary people.
But it's also the thing that I've tried to explain to people. Chris, great
when
to see you.
People don't fit into a category, that causes a lot of people discomfort, to which I say, I don't give a shit.
It's also the thing that I think a lot of people do not understand when it comes to things like the pronouns, is that people there is this desire to have some form of an identity that they can say, well, this is me. This is who I am. This is, it's the tattoos. There's an obsession with ink that has never been seen before. But so much of it is when you ask somebody, why do I get so much ink? Why is that tattoo, this sleeve, this and that? And what do they always say?
Tequila.
Well, this is important to me. This means something to me. This is who I am. This is how I identify myself. And for so many, they feel like there's like a lack of identity in the world today. And so just picking a team is like, well, I'm a Democrat. Well, I'm a Republican.
But
I'm a
I think
libertarian.
it's more that other people like to label people because it makes it easier for them to classify you and judge you. I don't know that it's necessarily so much that people want to give themselves labels as much as other people like to know, well, what party are you? Well, what religion are you? Well, what do you believe? Do you believe in socialism? Are you a communist? Are you a capitalist? Do you believe in, everybody feels the need to label you because it makes them feel better that you fit into some friggin' box that's their paradigm of the universe. And I reject that. I do not have an ism. I reject isms.
I agree. And I also think that this is the system is collapsing on itself.
Oh.
How it ultimately spirals and disintegrates or whatever's going to happen, I don't know. I just know that enough people are really getting tired of this and they're having a very hard time justifying it. And the only reason why Joe Biden is being thrust upon us again is because they know that they don't have any way of selling their bullshit anymore. And they will hire the little twerps of the world, and that's what they are, the privileged twerps, because it's not like they're picking these little kids off the street that are just trying to make it in this world. They're actually giving privileged kids these big platforms within the Democratic establishment to say that Joe Biden's the most progressive president in my lifetime.
Well, do you think they'd be able to find other kids to do that weren't privileged kids?
To lie through their teeth, considering how bad things are. And anyone who thinks that things are not bad, believe me, they're bad. Really freaking bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
So pretending like it isn't
happening. There's tents everywhere
insane.
Here, by the way.
There is.
There's
all
tents
over DC.
everywhere.
And again, it's a bad
and by the way, unhoused and untented. There's plenty of that too.
Oh yeah.
I've seen so many people it's out of control here.
Yes, we did neoliberal tears. Medea's a champion. She's the real deal.
Oh, I love her. We saw her today. She came over to our event and spoke after that event. And yes.
We took some good pictures. We'll put some
I do love me some Medea. She's something special. She's like friggin' firecracker feisty. She's great. Yeah, she's one of the people that's in it for the real right reasons, and she's in it for the fight, and she's extremely smart. And let me tell you something. They're scared of her. It's fascinating. I cannot tell you how teeny this woman is. This is like this petite. She is the most non-threatening looking person you can think of. And yet they're so scared of her because as soon as she showed up, that's when the Capitol Police showed up.
But nobody ever called the police on her like Debbie Wasserman Schultz did.
Debbie called the police
and she had her choked. You're joking me. And I'm thinking this lady is going to get killed.
First of all, Debbie, if Medea wanted to kick your ass, she would.
Man, imagine if Medea, Debbie, if Medea Benjamin can kick your ass, maybe it really is time to just go.
I'm not saying Medea, because Medea, this is somebody who is like a pacifist, anti-war
75
person.
pounds soaking wet.
Right. But here's the thing is she's got the balls on her. See, that's the thing. That's why they're scared of her. It doesn't matter. She's threatening because she is not scared of them. And that's very, very scary to them. But yeah, the fact that somebody would be scared of her physically is hilarious. She's scary, not physically, but physically, no. No, I can think of like Bambi, maybe. Like there's not a whole lot of things that are less physically threatening than Medea. But yes, our congresswoman did call the Capitol Police on her and accused her of assault.
Ryan Grimm was obviously great to meet. We have a follow-up conversation with him soon. Talk about a guy who runs a tight ship, and
I like him.
He's a hands-on pop.
I like Ryan.
Yeah, there are a lot of good people that are out there.
Yeah, but the DC activists, the DC Assange team, you guys are amazing, and I'm so appreciative that they. I mean, I know that we're all in it in the same idea, the same mission, and they know that obviously this is something I really care about, but they were very, very inclusive and very welcoming. And not all activists and all organizations work that way. There is a lot of egos. There's a lot of egos and a lot of fiefdoms and a lot of people that care about credit and getting credit and it being their event. There is a lot of ridiculous, petty nonsense in the activist left. And so I was just very appreciative. Like it was Ann Wilcox and what's Suzanne? I forget Suzanne's name. Suzanne Murphy. Great. And there were a bunch of women. Mostly, there were a few guys, but there was mostly older women, and they were amazing, and they were just so nice, and I felt very like welcome by them. Yeah, Medea is amazing.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And they actually asked me to speak, which was sweet. Like I wasn't expecting to. I think they were just so amazed that somebody would come here from Florida for this. Like, I think that was just so exciting for them. And I'm like, sorry, I brought you not the good weather. Yeah. It was a little cold, but that's okay. It wasn't bad.
No, it was in the mid 50s.
It was fine. It was a little overcast and dreary, but it was fine. Yeah. It was windy. Really nice. And I don't always feel like in our community, in our activist part of the world down in South Florida, it doesn't commingle like that. There's a lot more, it's very territorial and it's very, very ego driven.
Well, they have no idea how to build coalitions. See, for me, it's always been easy because, as I've always said, I could easily run against Wasserman Schultz for Congress, but I would lose. And I know I would lose, even though I could probably be a great candidate, because I check my ego at the door. It isn't about me. It's about always recognizing what the mission is and doing what is necessary to further that mission.
I wanted you to run against Debbie. I wanted him to run and me be the campaign manager.
This is specifically why I get highly critical of people who choose to run for these offices and ask for money when they have absolutely no business doing it whatsoever, because they're not moving the needle in any way, shape, or form. They're wasting time. They're wasting money. They're wasting hours.
And it isn't just because you don't win. It isn't just because you don't win. We ran a campaign that we didn't win, but we didn't waste our time. We built up resources and momentum and coalition and service. And it depends on what is your mission and what is your campaign trying to achieve. And there are ways to do this. If you run a service-based campaign, if you're building coalitions with labor and with all the different communities, you're creating part of the snowball that we need to go forward. So win or lose, it's still a good move. But there's people that will run campaigns that are about them, and they're also not a great candidate. So one, they have no chance of winning, and two, their campaign isn't really about furthering the mission.
I'm going to give you guys a name right now that I'm going to call out, and I don't give a shit.
All right, let me just right now saying the opinions of Peter Hager reflect that of himself only.
Now, it's funny because I don't recognize the person's name who's running against Lauren Boebert, who is, running as part of like the Democratic establishment.
Is it the same person as last time?
Yeah, same guy. You see, he's a candidate worth backing, even if the Democratic establishment is there. I totally get a race like that. The race that I have a problem with is a race like John Burroughs, who's running against Kevin McCarthy out in California. That is like a +20, +25R district. And I know he's getting a boatload of money from the establishment because I know who retweets his stuff, because I know these guys that are in the higher echelon of what you would consider the millennial Gen Z group of people that pump up these accounts.
They're white collar carnies.
That's exactly what's going on here.
They're
and
carnies.
So John Burroughs, who's constantly talking about, I'm going to defeat Kevin McCarthy.
No,
you're not going to do anything. You're going to do nothing. And you're going to waste money and time and resources because, somebody's got, no, this is like the same Yahoo dumb effers out there that did the same shit 2 years ago with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it was 3 of them that went at it to try to get the nomination to lose by 30 points in the general election.
Is not helping your mission.
And that's something that doesn't get called out. And the reason it doesn't get called out is because we have a very big problem in the political arena, especially on the Democratic side, with this thing called the consultant class. And everyone should know that is what is one of the biggest problems that we have in the two-party system.
That's why we see so many of the fucked up campaigns that we see.
Correct. They make no sense on paper, but people are getting paid.
Pay a lot of money. They're suckling at that nice consultant teat of the campaign. And these are real white-collar carnies, let me tell you. These people are like they're like sycophants that move from one, or like viruses that move from, and they have to be hosted from one host to another, and they just move around the country, and they don't care if they win, and they don't care what your mission is. They're getting paid. That's what they care about. And that's all these consultants that are working on all these campaigns. That's all that matters to them, is getting paid. Let me tell you, in Florida, how annoying is it? We had something, I want to say it was like 20 winnable or competitive statewide
Got
legislature
completely ignored.
seats that our state party completely did nothing about.
And Richard brings up a very good point. Yes, Val Demings got an exceptional amount of
Oh
money
my God.
for a race that couldn't be won. She outspent Rubio by $25 million, only to lose by 17 points instead of 20. It's like,
Yeah.
at
See, that
some
is where
point-
it's what that is the prime example of the consultant class suckling at the teat.
It is.
They made a fortune on that campaign. It went absolutely nowhere. It didn't forward any mission, any party, anything, and they made a fortune on it.
And
that's what's frustrating. So those kinds of campaigns are infuriating. Losing isn't the problem.
Neoliberal, I'm not going to say his name, but yes, he is one of those guys. That is absolutely one of those guys. He's part of that group, if you will. That is, and again, especially for young people, this is a very well-paying career to just basically be a total, sycophant for the party establishment.
Well, we know a lot of people that aren't young that do it too. Let's be real.
Oh, absolutely.
We know plenty of useful tool idiots for the party.
And then you really think about, this bigger problem here. And again, one thing, Richard, that you bring up, which is a very good point, because there was this thought process of, well, the Democrats are being abandoned in the state of Florida. Charlie Crist didn't have a lot of money. Well, guess what? Val Demings did have a lot of money, and it didn't make any difference whatsoever.
No, it wouldn't have mattered.
The mission, the message, if you had 25 million less than what Val Demings had, but your mission and your message was correct, and you had the credentials to back it up, let me tell you, that would cause a stir. This is an economic populist state. Frankly, probably most states in the South are economically populist.
Yeah.
Most people are just not being approached that way because, again, it's a game.
Well, that's what I've been saying a lot lately. Florida is not as much a red state as we're a red legislature. Our state is actually purple and fairly populist. It's really not a red state. The legislature is too far gone.
And a perfect example of that,
way red.
and a perfect example of how they absolutely do this as part of a plan, if you will, is that Anthony Nieves, who probably only needed about $10,000 to $15,000. That's it. And the worst part about it, this
is someone running for state legislature that the Democrats didn't put any effort into, who was a great candidate.
Not only did they not put any effort into it, he is in the same region that Val Demings is from. She gets all that money to waste it on a campaign that can't be won, where meanwhile you got somebody locally that could have easily made the difference.
Yep, taken and switched a red seat right in our legislature. Well, that's the thing. The Democrats put no resources behind winnable seats here. They throw all their money into the statewide race that can't be won. They can't be won. Wait, what? I mean, they really were wasting their time. And the thing is that they really don't have good candidates. I'm sorry, Charlie Crist is horrible candidate. Horrible candidate.
Yeah.
Horrible candidate.
And you know what? And the more sad part about it is that when I went to the Democratic Party gala in Orlando, which was about a year before the actual primary election took place, and I remember calling Jen walking out of there.
He said, "Yeah, Charlie's going to be the nominee." That's what he walked out. He goes, "Yeah, they're going to pick Charlie."
And this also goes to show you how the bench, it doesn't exist.
And I think at that point I said, and it'll go nowhere.
Correct. But again, it speaks to the bigger problem. And yes, Notary, gerrymandering is a problem on both sides, no matter how many ways you slice it. Is it a problem for Democrats in this state because of the GOP? Absolutely.
Yeah, but the Democrats screw over their own in New York. They do. Gerrymandering.
They do the same thing in California. Again, it's a dirty effing game. And the best thing that's happened recently in terms of electoral politics is Jane, Polish last name,
Judge P.
Protasiewicz.
Judge P.
John Nichols, if you see this, correct us so we can say it right.
Protasiewicz.
By her winning and flipping it from Republican or from conservative to liberal on the court, that is going to make a significant difference. For this reason, Wisconsin is one of the absolute worst gerrymandered states in the country.
1,000% neoliberal.
That is a true progressive populist state. Now, they will vote libertarian red, and yes, they voted for Ron Johnson. Maybe they run bad candidates on purpose. You think? Of course they do.
Hence, Joe Biden. You thought he was a good candidate?
What are you talking about?
The truth is they don't have anybody because they don't stand for anything. They stand for nothing. And when you stand for nothing, you are nothing. So I don't know what it is. Like, I don't like the Republican platform. I never have. It's not my bag. It's not my thing. I don't like what they stand for, but they stand for something.
Yeah. And they stand for something that clearly a lot of the people that support them believe in.
And again, I'm not supporting it. I don't like it. But the reason that Democrats can't get anywhere is because they don't stand for anything other than saying we're better than them. But based on what?
Now, let's see just how big of a momentum movement it actually gets. When push comes to shove, let's see how these guys actually vote. Let's see if we're sitting in a circumstance in the not too distant future where you have people who are a growing movement on the right who are sick and tired of the corporate money, of the corruption, of all of that. Well, let's see if you start pushing them, because we know what the Democratic side does. Let's see how the Republicans respond to it, because eventually the walls come closing in. You can't have it going from one side, because all it's going to do is just drift things to the right. But if people on the Republican side start saying, oh, no, I don't want this corporate money anymore, eventually what you do is you end up in the middle and they get squished because people are getting sick of this. And how could you not? In a way, maybe we do deserve to have Joe Biden and Donald Trump, because at some point someone's going to say, I can't take this anymore.
I would argue we're getting exactly what we deserve. But then again, I always argue that everybody gets what they deserve, because I just believe that's how the universe works. But we've definitely set this up for ourselves. And anybody that is not at least waking up to that and seeing it and understanding it. But it's like, it's hard because people are so tribal. But guys, the parties is just this facade. We're in a class war.
We are.
We're in a class war. And it's very frustrating, because this is the kind of thing that this is why Democrats, I think, drag their feet with getting with labor, because they know if they actually get with labor and labor really is able to take over the party, then their elitist selves would really have to either switch over to the Republican side or have nowhere else to go.
Well, you notice how the Democrats have welcomed in all of the neocon Republicans.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been talked about a lot.
They prefer them.
Steve, who was the guy that worked on McCain's campaign? I'm forgetting his name.
You asked me like I would know these things.
Anyway, you have Crystal, you have David Frum, all of these guys,
piece of shit.
And David Frum is one of the absolute worst.
When he rears his head out, I just want to like punch it back in.
David Frum is like John Podesta. He's like Debbie. He's Hillary.
They need to
go. The worst of the worst. And he's a war criminal as far as I'm concerned.
To me, everybody affiliated with like the past 4 presidential administrations are war criminals. Can you not do
I'm
this
trying
stuff?
not to do anything.
Just what is it you want to do?
Well, our crowd keeps growing, which is kind of interesting.
I don't know why. So guys, what was really fun for anybody who's new and joining us, we just came from, and I'm calming down a little bit from my nice little drunkenness, because we went out and it was fun. I got to meet Max Alvarez in person, which was really cool. Yes. Okay. And that was really fun, guys. If you're not familiar, we of course have had Max on multiple times, and he is somebody who is, yes, a real journalist for the Real News Network. If you guys don't watch the Real News Network, but it was really fun meeting him in person. And yes, I got to meet Ryan Grimm in person this morning today, which was kind of fun too. Yeah, I like Ryan Grimm.
Do you want yours?
I'm going to wait until you want to like rap and do what you want to do.
Oh, well,
I don't want to sit here and eat with everybody watching me.
I mean,
I don't need to eat on camera. Do you have other things you want to cover?
I just like the fact that we have a nice little crowd going right now, and don't want to, you got to give the audience what they want.
What does the audience want? Okay, so the only hope for America is to destroy the Democratic Party. Well, yeah, but it's the bigger issue is to have a Labor Party. If we had a Labor Party of some kind in this country, then that would be okay. Obviously, I'd like to have multiple parties. It would be nice. The more, the merrier. I'd rather have like more of a parliamentary type of system. But the Democratic Party, in and of itself, is irrelevant. We don't need to do anything to it. It would gradually be completely obsolete if we had a Labor Party. The Democratic Party would just gradually fold into the Republican Party, or maybe it would sort of morph into that, and then the Republicans would go more to the right. I don't know. Yeah. But the issue isn't what happens to the Democrats. The issue is, how do we get a Labor Party? How do we get labor represented? And right now, there's a few different things going on. So you have people like Shama Sawant that are on the outside that are forming labor coalitions. There's a lot of things going on in that capacity, but we still need to have an inside movement with labor. And unfortunately, right now, the best we're going to do with the inside strategy is really trying to force the Democrats to merge back with Labor. And we're really having, I'd say, better luck on that for a lot of people, more on local and state, but it's happening. But that's what has to happen. I mean, yes, I agree. The current incarnation of the Democratic Party, which is basically Republican light, it just serves no purpose. There's no point to it. It doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't represent any different demographic than the Republicans do, except for they're just pro-choice people, or not even that. I don't know, but but the issue isn't what happens to them. I actually don't care one way or the other what happens to the Democratic Party. Now, if we can somehow merge them with Labor and get that back in line the way it was originally and the way it's meant to be, and we have a Labor Party, then the Democrats is fine. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Now, if the Democrats aren't going to eventually get on board with that, then I would like to see a groundswell of labor movement coming up that would eventually challenge that either as a political party or get to the point where they just can no longer, the Democrats can't function without incorporating them somehow. So I'm kind of with both of that. But yeah, getting rid of the Dems doesn't solve the problem of creating a Labor Party.
No, you need the inside-outside strategy.
Yeah, that's the problem. You get rid of the Dems. I mean, look, I wish we had no parties. I'd like to have no parties.
That's what George Washington wanted.
I'd like no parties. And if we didn't have parties and everybody just sort of voted for people based on populist ideas and went with majority rule, we would be living in a society where our policy reflected our public opinion.
Well, notary, as Jen often likes to say, it would be nice if we had two parties. We don't have a party of labor. We have two corporate parties that just masquerade as being different. The only reason why we ever get anything talked about, like with the trans issues and abortion, is because the wedge issues will always dominate. There will never be a time where there's going to be this raucous debate about universal health care from two corporate parties. Not happening. You ever wonder why, when it comes to the Gen Zers, for example, that get the very big megaphones?
By Labor Party, do I mean formal third party? I would support that 1,000%. I'd love that. But I'm for trying all of it.
But you have to remember that there's a reason why the gun debate makes it front and center all day, every day. And that these kids are out there talking about, well, I want to feel safe in school. It's like they know that something is severely wrong with this country. Economic anxiety has a lot to do with it. And that's why people kill. That's why people kill and take themselves. They have to take people with them. It's their way of basically their last hurrah of saying F you to the world.
I just think people are so desperate and miserable. And it's just, that's the bigger issue, not the guns. The guns isn't, I mean, the guns is, it's a symptom. It's definitely a symptom of a sick society.
Take somebody like the most noted of the person with the most notoriety of an activist who's down here in South Florida, which of course is David Hoke. If he got on his megaphone with his 1 million+ followers and started talking nonstop about how we need universal health care in the United States, watch how fast the Democratic Party runs away from him and never gives him a platform again. Because that's what will happen. That's how this works.
They're only willing to hear what they're willing to hear. I love Shama, and I know, and a lot of people probably have suggested that she run for a different office. Let me say something about her. She's extremely bright. And the best thing about her is she totally knows where she best is going to serve. She knows exactly what her strengths are. She knows exactly where her power base is, and she knows exactly how to do what she needs to do the best that she can do. So she's going to put herself in whatever position it is, whether it's in an outside strategy, whatever. She knows what she needs to do to be most effective. That's what Shama Sawant is.
For as little as $5 a month, you can become a wonderful subscriber, a supporter, patron of our channel.
And Patreon. I would love to talk to her.
Patreon.com/generational change. We're going to get it. We'll get her eventually. At least
I love you, Shama Sawant.
If you do $10 a month, you're going to get the Lulu sticker and the bumper sticker, who is, of course, who we still believe is going to be the next president, Mansion Parliamentarian.
Mansion Parliamentarian,
Don't forget,
guys.
On Status Quo News, who a lot of you guys watch, let's be honest, it's a pretty big deal. We also are very happy to see that Jordan Cheriton is displaying the Mansion Parliamentarian bumper.
So, guys, that Mansion Parliamentarian, and look, we're starting to get into it with the candidates. All right. Now we've got like some viable things happening here.
We also have to get on the lady from, I want to say, I can't even think of it right now. But
vote for the real power in the party, people.
Yes.
These are the two people that are the reason we couldn't get the $15 minimum wage, and I believe the other deal. What was the one? The Build Back Better. Like these are the reason why we can't have nice things. Let's put them in charge. If you have that much power, be in charge.
You know, here's the thing. Everyone has this belief in their mind. Oh, and of course, for $25 a month, you can get the Generational Change Tribe Blend wonderful T-shirt.
You get the jersey.
And then, of course, for those of you who do not want to put your information on the grid, which is certainly understandable, what we would ask is that you go to Cash App, $GenChange. That makes a huge difference in any and all support that you give. But of course, liking, subscribing, sharing, doing all those things, clicking the bell so that you know when we are going live is also very, very important. So,
oh yeah, we always have the rotating villain, and Jordan does rock. I don't have thoughts on the debt ceiling. I really don't. I'll defer to my friend Steve Grumbine about things like the debt ceiling. I can't get into that.
But the fact is,
voodoo math.
What ultimately ends up happening, because we are a currency issuer and that we can print money, the reason we cannot control inflation is much like what happened during COVID, is that the money always ends up going where it doesn't need to go. And where it does need to go,
you mean
never
like to the
gets
Clinton
there.
Foundation?
How about the fact that Tom Brady got $1 million in PPP loan money, which is just insane. So the fact that happened,
I'm so
Notary,
glad he's done.
Thank you, brother. Very much appreciated. Although you
just have to hit it in the middle of it.
Oh.
Okay, when you hit it on the sides, it does different things.
I don't really like doing that. But the fact that you are willing to give us a super sticker is super duper awesome.
Thank you, Notary.
I'm
I'm also a notary, by the way. Did you know that?
I didn't.
I actually am a notary.
Well, that's very impressive.
Well, not really, but it's just kind of funny that his name is.
Well, there was one comment that was made, I think by Richard.
Somebody
no, Drew Chains. Good to see you. All Democratic strategists are COVID deniers too. You see, this is the difference between what RFK is saying versus what a lot of other people say. There are people who literally deny COVID, that it wasn't deadly, that it was just made up, it was actually the flu.
I don't know that I agree that all Democratic strategists are COVID deniers. I know a lot of Democratic strategists that were pretty pro-mask, pro-vaccine.
Yeah, no,
I don't know what I don't know what that's about. You just have to hit it like in the middle of it and not on the edges, because on the edges, it'll do other things.
Absolutely. And Master, you are correct. This is an issue that goes back and forth constantly. There is no end in sight. And again, the goal here is to make sure that you don't have a living wage. You don't have universal health care. You cannot drink your water, stay poor, and stay forever until you wake up and realize, oh, yeah, that's right. There are more of us than there are of them. They answer to us, not the other way around. But people eventually have to get together. Yes.
Do we have anything interesting coming up?
Well, my birthday is on Saturday.
Besides your birthday. Guys, tomorrow there will be a Gen Z report.
Yes, there will. We are very likely going to do a birthday podcast / fundraiser, depending on who we can get to come on Monday. We'll see how that ends up going. If not, we do have some interesting guests lining up, which is going to be great. And can't think of them off the top of my head at the moment because I'm not looking at a calendar, but we are obviously, thank you, Josh. We are very appreciative for each and every one of you who are here today. Yes, I will. I
think this is the first time you and I have ever, no, we did it once in Cleveland. I think we did a live where it was the two of us. Yeah, but this has been really good. We're glad a lot of you guys were able to come on late. And of course, it's not a surprise, but after 10 o'clock, 10:15, that's when the crowd really started to pick up. We were sitting with 6 or 7 people for a while. Then it got up to then we had another 20 people join us. But those first 6 people are usually my favorite people.
Well, Josh the Junkie has been here pretty much from the very beginning.
I appreciate it, man. I
also want to give a shout out, of course, again,
our
without question,
people.
to Notary. Even though he came late, he chipped in. That's more than enough support.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Meme Master's been here most of the night. We're grateful for each and every one of you.
We are. We know that we're small and we know that we're mighty and we know that we have certain limited resources, but we really do care and we really do try to put out information that we think is useful. And we're really working towards a mission.
We are. I think we're doing a pretty decent job of that. But remember to like, subscribe, share, do all those wonderful things that we ask you to do constantly, because it really does make a difference. We have some good clips coming out. Sure, you'll check them out. Until then,
my buzz is worn off.
Yes, on the other side of 40, got to eat some grub. We'll see you next week.
Bye, all.